A major new development in the long-running Jeffrey Epstein saga, which has already revealed so many government failures, tough questions for the Trump DOJ, the mismanagement that we all saw of Epstein's initial death, the secrecy, and the failures to pursue accountability in many directions. But now we turn to something that is truly unusual. I know in the news and in this recent era, you hear that a lot, but as someone who's practiced law and covered law in the Epstein case, you almost never see something like this. The news tonight here. 7 years after Epstein was found dead, the government has now made this extremely late disclosure of a handwritten note purportedly by Epstein from jail. We're going to get into this. That is what it looks like. That's the actual handwriting. The Times reports that Epstein's cellmate said he discovered the note in July 2019 after he was found unresponsive with the strip of cloth wrapped around his neck. So to be clear, the note that I'm about to read to you is from around the time that the jail documented Epstein as a potential suicide risk, but not his later death. They put him on suicide watch after he was found injured in his cell in July 2019. Now, that first incident was significant because the jail later failed to follow suicide watch rules, and this ended after just 6 days, and a few weeks later, Epstein was found dead. This is part of our timeline that shows, as you can see, a lot of different events, but specifically, if you look at the very far left point, cellmate tried to kill him. It was the government record of that July account that I'm mentioning here. Government later ruled the death a suicide, but there were so many irregularities as we've reported. Now, in that first incident, recall that Epstein had told staff his cellmate tried to kill him, and that's what government records show. But then later, he also told officers that he didn't really know what occurred. Epstein's cellmate denied it and said Epstein did try to hang himself. I want to give you that context so you understand exactly what we're reading from, because for the first time, we have a newly revealed document viewed as a potential suicide note from that first incident. This is critical evidence, and it is a scandal that this was held secret for 7 years until last night. And I have more on that piece of the story, but now, with that background, here is the single-page evidence. It reads, they investigated me for a month, found nothing. So 16-year-old charges resulted. It is a treat to be able to choose one's time to say goodbye. What you want me to do, bust out crying. You see that written there? And then at the end in caps, no fun, not worth it. Now, from an investigative or journalistic view, you take a note like this and you reason through it. Clearly, the tone reflects a negative view of the case and this individual's future. The writer is asserting that they are going to choose how to depart or say goodbye, which reflects a kind of suicidal intent. Now, government sources and the journalists who've looked at this have not been able to corroborate that this note was definitely by Epstein. We don't have, for example, recent forensics or any kind of good chain of custody all these years later. We can also tell you the note uses similar wording to Epstein's past writings and emails, which of course were not public at the time. And that makes it less likely that a random person in 2019 would be able to replicate his exact speech, unless you think that he talked like that all the time and they overheard it, but it's certainly less likely. We have emails where Epstein used the very phrase, what you want me to do, bust out crime. Another note found in Epstein's jail cell has some similar handwriting and the all caps phrase, no fun. That is similar to this note. And again, like any investigation, you say that adds, it bolsters the view that this was really Epstein's handwriting, that he did write this. It doesn't authenticate it, right? It's not at the level where you say, oh, we have DNA or a video of him writing it, which from an investigative view would be higher corroboration, but this is not some shoddy, easily debunked fake. Now, for the long road to get here, this note was sealed in an unrelated case that involves Epstein's former cellmate. It's only out now because intrepid New York Times journalists pressed to unseal it, and a judge finally did that at the end of the day yesterday. Now, given the conflicting history of the initial July incident, if there was a real note that shows Epstein's intent to take his life, that adds to the evidence of suicide. Remember, there was a lot of government secrecy and conflicting evidence, as we showed in this death timeline report, that has dogged what was then the Trump DOJ's oversight and also raised questions about how the Biden DOJ dealt with this in a later report. So there's been questions about the cause of his death, and obviously, as I've said before, any legitimate question about whether he actually didn't take his life or there was foul play is a huge deal, one that the Congress ultimately viewed as legitimate in reopening this issue with the Epstein files section that required new material. And then, of course, we had the failed prison protocols and the botched crime scene.
More than 6 years later, key details of Jeffrey Epstein's death remain unresolved.
I'd like to see an investigation to understand how this was permitted to happen.
There's a lot that's been wrong with this case from the very first inception to this now embarrassing in custody death.
There's some significant questions on how somebody who it was such a high-profile defendant could be found dead and how this could have happened.
This is not adequate as far as I'm concerned.
These are real questions. And the Trump and then later Biden DOJ, from our review and a lot of public evidence that we have, basically tried to put the questions to rest, to wrap this up. Then the historic, unusual release of the Epstein files, which gave us DOJ internal materials and, of course, the emails, revealed more mistakes and secrecy from within the government, starting with the Trump DOJ, including how they mishandled the death scene, shredded documents. All of this was in our timeline before we even got last night's new note. As for the failed protocols, remember, federal guards under the Trump DOJ did not do the nightly inmate checks. They also failed to check fingerprints or DNA tests in the cell after Epstein's death. CBS reporting on that noticeable oversight. I want you to remember the medical examiner did rule this a suicide and cited no evidence of defensive wounds, the kind of thing that you might find if there were foul play. Only one camera was operating inside the area outside Epstein's cell block. You can see here just one in green, according to the CBS account. And under two administrations, the DOJ ultimately said there wasn't foul play and there weren't any people near Epstein's cell that night. Now, if the government is right about that, if no other person got near him, that would corroborate suicide rather than another person perhaps doing foul play. The only footage we have from the night he died, which was, again, released in this unusual Epstein files. The government didn't think we'd ever see what you see there, that apparent orange flash, which is suspicious. It suggests possibly at least a person in orange, typically the inmate attire, was somehow on the loose in that very area at 10:39 p.m., something that the DOJ denied. I want you to also know that suicide, as you see, is there from the sources, but others, including people involved with Epstein's defense, do believe it was foul play. If this long secret note was written by Epstein, it does bolster evidence of at least his suicidal intent in July, weeks before his death. It is remarkable and a problem that the government had this note for this long and for a series of reasons we're going to get into, held it back. But now we have it. The note sealed as part of this Epstein cellmate case. And that cellmate has said, and this is what Ben was reporting on, he discovered the note that period in July before Epstein was found dead. Now, this is interesting and new tonight. A spokesperson from the current Trump DOJ telling the Times the agency had never seen this note, even amid all of the scrutiny in the files that they do have. And that's important because the DOJ later, including under the Biden administration, did this full report about Epstein's attention and death, released in 23. It would seem that, according to the current DOJ, they didn't even have this, which raises questions about whether that report and the evidence they had was incomplete and whether there were people inside the government who, quite frankly, didn't want to turn over every rock.